Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFS Report. It is Wednesday, January the 29th. I hope everyone's having a fine Wednesday afternoon. Sorry for the delay. Zach and I had a meeting, so a couple minutes late here. Zach also has to leave a little bit early today. Confirmed cat guy. I thought I knew you. Thought you were a dog guy, but confirmed cat guy. Going to pick up a new cat. Congratulations. Doing it the right way. So that's cool. I guess if you're gonna adopt, or if you're gonna get a cat, you might as well adopt it. That's the way I look at things. Not a big cat guy myself, but to each their own. Best of luck with all of that. Let's get through today's show. We got a 5-game slate. We want to make sure we got Zach for the whole show. If he leaves us early for a cat, I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him. Before we get into today's show, yesterday on the show, we got some comments here. Cats, gross. I agree with Michael, but Jim agrees with Zach. Also prefer cats. On yesterday's show, we said, boy, if I'm not going to win the $100,000, which I didn't, hopefully somebody watching wins the $100,000. And Zach, it was oh so close. We had a viewer reach out to us. They were leading when they at 1:30 a.m. leading, winning the 100K, and then there was a stat correction, and he ended up finishing second by like a hair. So here's a look. Shout out to 908 Connor. 0.4 points. It was a block shot stat correction that pushed him from 100K to second. I mean, what did he say? What did he call it? A house of horrors?
Yeah, he called it a house of horrors. Send me a DM this morning and was like, hey, like, thanks for all the help with the show yesterday. And I was right there, and it was a complete horror show unfolded after I went to bed. So poor guy went to bed thinking that he was 100K richer. And then Charlie shot block stat correction dropped him down 70K. But hey, 30G, that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all.
No, that's a tough wake up call though. And you thought you won 100K and you wake up to 30. I mean, I would have happily woke up to 30, but man, that's a big fall off. Let's take a quick look at his lineup as well. A lot of we were all in on Anaheim last night. Really liked them. Got the McTavish in there as well, who had a great night. Jackson Lacombe was terrific. Went with a little Brock Nelson, Tony DeAngelo mini stack as well. Interesting. And then obviously the double Hattie from Tage Thompson and JJ Peterka. And then I mean, I knew exactly what was going to happen in that Calgary-Washington game. I called the 3-1 win for Washington. That was exactly what happened. So congratulations to Connor. Absolutely tremendous stuff. Really happy that, if I wasn't going to be the one to win it, I'm glad somebody that watches the show did. So $30,000, congratulations. And obviously, Zach, we're doing something right. If we're able to help provide any help that leads to that is great stuff. So let's hope that we can continue the roll this evening. Just a couple quick notes before we get in. Our guy Beebs jumps in the chat and lets us know that Harrison starts in New Jersey. Sean Couture is back in. Luckily, I had already projected that he would be back in, so the charts are up to date with that. And John says, you guys are great. Thanks, John. Smash that like button for all the support. Okay, let's get into tonight's slate. So we have Zach for the whole show. We got a 5-game slate, as I mentioned, locks at 7 p.m. Eastern. Joseph Woll likely to get the start for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It'll be Philip Gustafsson starting for the Kirill Kaprizov list, Minnesota Wild. Kirill Kaprizov scheduled to undergo surgery. If you missed it yesterday, expected to miss at least 4 weeks. Sergei Bobrovsky starts for the Florida Panthers. Likely going to see Darcy Kemper for the LA Kings. That came across about an hour ago. Jake Allen likely to get the start for the New Jersey Devils. Probably going to start basically every single game moving forward with Jacob Markstrom out. And then as Beebs just pointed out, Harrison does get the start for the Flyers. There you go, confirmed. UC Staros starts for the Nashville Predators. It'll be Thatcher Demko for the Vancouver Canucks. And then Connor Ingram versus Alex Nedeljkovic in the nightcap. So nice looking 5-game slate tonight. Let's dive right in. We'll start at the tippy top with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Minnesota Wild. The Maple Leafs are minus 151 home favorites, 3.2 implied total for them, 2.6 implied total for the Minnesota Wild. In terms of the matchups for this one, not great, to be honest with you. You're going to see a lot of top line against top line, second line against second line, third line against third line, fourth line versus fourth line in this game. About 50% of the ice time across the board for all of them. Not great matchups overall for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So We know the Minnesota Wild are a talented defensive team. Without Kirill Kaprizov, they're probably going to have to lean into that defensive side of play a little bit more, right? And you take a look at the line stats here for the Minnesota Wild, pretty good across the board outside of that fourth line. The second line, really, really strong defensive numbers. So you're going to see a lot of the Austin Matthews line, which does not have nearly as good of offensive metrics with Bobby McMahon on that top line as it does with Matthew Nyes. They're going to see a lot of this Joel Eriksson line, which has been very, very good defensively so far this season, and Ericsson's basically been good defensively his entire career. So not the best matchup overall for Toronto 1. This is a Toronto team also that is really to score goals right now, and it feels like kind of like Toronto 1 or bust. Take a look at this lineup. I mean, not a whole lot of love going on here for William Nylander playing with Max Domi and Pontus Holmberg. Then you got Pacioretty expected to be back in the mix tonight with Minton and Robertson on that third line. But really feels like it's the top line is the only one that's really capable of absolutely crushing in this spot for the Leafs. Even with the bad matchup, they still grade out as the number one line to target overall tonight. They're seeing a healthy amount of ownership at 17.7%, the second highest on the slate. A lot of why they grade out so well, Zach, is because they do play a ton, right? With this lineup being so shorthanded, that top six is going to be leaned on very heavy tonight, specifically that top line. They also have the third best power play advantage on the slate tonight. 12th best power play up against a really, really bad Minnesota penalty kill as of late. So the only thing the Wild really have going for them is that they are pretty disciplined. So they don't, they're not killing penalties as frequently as most, but when they are killing penalties, they're not doing much killing. So I like Toronto 1 tonight. I think that they are in a good spot. They grade out number one overall. The playing time should be good. But man, this is a team that is struggling to score goals right now. What are you doing with the Leafs on a 5-game slate tonight?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, I think this is kind of one of those typical Toronto 1 spots for me where, the field is really heavy on them tonight. They don't look like they're in that great of a spot, and I'm going to be comfortable coming in under the field here on Toronto 1 here. I mean, the other side of this coin is that, there's been some pretty high scoring games between these two teams over the last 3 seasons. 5 games played, the Leafs are 4-1 with their one loss coming in the shootout. Or sorry, I think it's what is it here? Sorry. One of them's an OT win for the Leafs, or 2 of those wins are an OT. My bad. So what, a 2-1 game here earlier on this season. Last year was a 4-3 win for the Leafs, 7-4 win for the Leafs, 2-1 OT win for the Leafs, 4-3 win for the Leafs. So they've kind of been some higher scoring games here between these two sides. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised to see that come to fruition here again tonight. I don't mind this Toronto 1 spot. I don't know if I love them at 17% here on the slate, given how difficult this matchup is. But it does kind of feel like a lot of that ownership is just kind of getting consolidated on the top line. Even though guys like William Nylander and Max Pacioretty are drawing quite a bit of ownership themselves at 15 and 10% respectively. So I'm going to be a little bit under the field here on Toronto 1 here tonight. I am only building 5 lineups. I do think they'll probably slide into one of them here because I do think it's a good enough spot. Obviously, with these top 2 lines here, Toronto 1 and Minnesota 1, grading out as the first and second best lines to target on the slate as a whole, I'm going to have to find some ways to work into them because in the charts we trust.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the Minnesota Wild grading out a little bit better in the charts than maybe what is reality as of late. Pull up the team chart here. The defensive metrics not super poor. There's not a lot of really bad defensive teams on this slate tonight, though, in terms of their last 10 games. 2.43 expected goals against per 60 at 5v5 isn't necessarily great, but it's not too bad either. But the 3.21 goals against per 60 is terrible. Then you factor in their struggles on the penalty kill, and I do think this isn't a terrible spot for the Leafs. As somebody pointed out in the chat, SMK 5430. Gus has been so bad lately, and he has. I mean, he was literally one of the best goalies in the world for the first 3 months of the season. In his last 6 starts, so in January, pretty much 1-4 with an 850 save percentage in his last 6 outings. He's really, really struggled as of late, and if that continues tonight in Toronto, I do think that this Leafs top line can be pretty solid tonight. I think that I'll probably be a little bit heavier on Toronto than you are, just because there's not a whole lot to get to on this Maple Leafs team otherwise. Like, I don't mind maybe a William Nylander one-off, but like, it's just so hard to get to the second line. Take a look at the offensive metrics. They're not very good. I mean, they're not terrible, but like with Holmberg and Domi, just feel like there's a lot of upside there. So Nylander one-offs feels okay. But outside of that, maybe some power play stacking going on with the Leafs, mostly top line. And then the power play stack for me. On the Minnesota side of things, the offensive metrics without Kaprizov aren't terrible. As you see here, the Leafs are really struggling defensively as of late. 2.64 expected goals against per 60 at 5v5 is the worst mark on this entire slate, believe it or not. The penalty kill has been okay, or 22nd best over the last 10 games, so not great. The Minnesota Wild power play 13th best. So this looks like an okay spot for the Wild as well. You mentioned it that these games have been relatively high scoring as of late. Minnesota 1 grades out as the second best line to target overall. So the charts do like this game. And if you take a look here at the matchups overall, you'll notice in the pace score, the later we get into the night, and the further we get out west, the lower the pace games get. So this is the highest event game of the slate, or at least projected to be. And Minnesota and Toronto graded out as the 2 top lines overall. Even without Kaprizov's pretty interesting. Boldy, Eriksson, Zuccarello, we've seen them play together a decent amount. Their matchup is quite good as they go head-to-head with that Matthews line. Not great defensively, not horrendous, but still limiting the opposition to 2.1 goals against per 60. But the scoring chances against not ideal. And then they're going to see kind of a mix of the bottom 9 a little bit as well. The Leafs have some decent defensive lines, and then obviously this third line has been really bad. This is a decent spot here, I think, for Minnesota 1. Again, no Kaprizov. They're probably going to lean on this line a little bit heavier, right? When Kaprizov's in the lineup, they like to go with Rossi, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and then Boldy and Eriksson, and they kind of siphon playing time from each other. When they kind of have to load that top line up without Kaprizov, you have to imagine that this line is going to see all the ice time they can handle tonight against this Matthews line. So pretty good matchup for Minnesota 1 as well. They're trying about 7% lower ownership than Toronto 1. So the second best line overall, and then 5th most ownership. Should be some decent leverage here on Minnesota 1. Before I get to you, Zach, Minnesota 2 grades out. Where did they go? I thought I saw them. 11th best overall. Foligno, Rossi, Hartman. I think they're a decent value option. Rossi and Hartman as a mini stack feels like an okay play. Rossi should step back up onto that top power play unit after getting demoted to the second power play unit. He was on that top unit with Eriksson, Boldy, Zuccarello, and Spurgeon while Kaprizov was out. So I don't mind getting to a little mini stack there of them. Again, their matchup isn't the best. They're going to see a little bit more of the second line, but their offensive metrics are also pretty solid. So I don't mind getting to them a little bit as well. And they're seeing just 5% ownership. Just 2% ownership. I think it's obviously very easy to get over the field. And in a spot here where potentially the highest pace game of the night, I don't mind getting some exposure to that line either. What are your thoughts here on the Wild tonight?
Yeah, I don't mind them here in this spot. I'm a little tepid about this top line. Not all three of these guys. Matt Boldy and Joel Eriksson mainly have kind of struggled against the Toronto Maple Leafs in their careers. Boldy's 6 games, 3 goals and 4 points. I guess he hasn't really struggled all that much. But Eriksson just 5 apples in 12 games played against them. Zuccarello, though, loves to play against the Leafs. 13 goals and 28 points in 26 career games. So I think I'm going to be comfortably having a Toronto 1 and a Minnesota 1 lineup in my 5 here tonight. Really try and capitalize on this high pace score. And again, it does kind of feel like this game is relatively siphoned to the top lines here. I don't hate the idea of like a little Marco Rossi, Ryan Hartman mini stack. If I was 20 maxing tonight, I'd be getting to that for sure. And probably even a little bit of this Toronto too, as gross as it is. Maybe a mini stack of Domi and William Nylander. But given that I'm only playing a limited number of lineups tonight, I don't think I'm going to get too cute with these depth lines and really just try and hammer in some Toronto 1 and Minnesota 1 and hope for the best here.
Yeah, Matt Boldy on a bit of a heater himself in his last, I believe this is 11 games, 14 points, 5 goals, 9 assists. Zuccarello has been pretty solid as well. Point per game in his last 10. The only issue with Zuccarello, doesn't score a lot of goals. Floor is okay, but more of an assist guy. Eriksson obviously got some decent shot volume up there as well. Fully correlated on that top power play unit. Let's go Minnesota. Let's go now to Florida, where the Panthers will host the LA Kings. 3.1 implied total for the Panthers, 2.5 for the Kings. The LA Kings will get Drew Doughty back tonight. He will make his season debut. They also have Kevin Fiala listed as a game time decision. They said that Fiala's availability will determine whether or not they go with 11 forwards or 12 forwards. They sent a player down. Can't remember who it is at the moment, but it kind of sets them up to go with 11-7 now. But Brant Clark, there's rumors that he could be a healthy scratch, so that could lead them to go back to 12-6. Regardless, Drew Doughty's expected to start on the third pairing, but is going to be on the top power play unit. He was on the top power play unit in practice this morning. which would bump obviously Jordan Spence at least down to the second unit, especially if Brant Clark is out of the lineup tonight. So Doughty making his debut. I believe he's $3,400. If I recall correctly. Yeah. Okay. I'm right. Love that for myself. This is way too big, by the way. He's $3,400. So that's obviously pretty interesting, especially on the top power play unit. I don't anticipate that Drew Doughty will return and immediately start munching 25 minutes tonight, especially if they go with 7 defensemen. But at $3,400, I don't mind getting to him a little bit. Matchups for this game, pretty bleak across the board. All below average on the top 9 for the Panthers. Very, very bad for the top 2 lines for the Kings. The third line, though, the line that has the best underlying metrics, has the best matchup overall. Going to see a heavy mix of the second and third line. If you take a look at the second and third lines for the Panthers, the second line really, really struggles. That's the line that you want to go up against. You want to go up with that against that Sam Bennett line. That is who LA3 is going to see the majority of their ice time against tonight. So pretty nice matchup there for that Philip Deneau line, which we know has just ridiculously good offensive metrics. So we'll start with LA side. LA3 grading out 5th best overall tonight, under 5% ownership. Really interesting spot. Is a line that we try to get in there as much as possible because they always represent pretty good value. They haven't necessarily returned that value more, as often as we'd like. Kevin Fiala starting to heat up. It all depends, right? If he's in the lineup, I am super interested in LA3 tonight. If Fiala ends up not playing due to illness, I mean, I don't know if I'll even play them at all. I just don't know how much I can trust Deneau and the Ferrier to get me there on their own. Without Fiala, they're probably not going to be nearly as good of a play. But if Fiala is in, sign me up there. Before I throw it to you, Zach, just want to bring up the Florida Panthers lines because they are getting back to something a little bit more to what you were used to seeing from them. Verhaeghe back on that top line with Barkov and Reinhart. Kachuk moves to the left side to play with Bennett. They're going to leave Samoskevich in the top 6. The Lucian and Lindell Rodriguez on that third line. For the Panthers, the second line grades out 8th best. The top line grades out 16th best. So it looks pretty good here for Florida too. Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, and Samoskevich. Samoskevich at $2,500 looks like a really nice value option. He's been solid. He's got a good offensive game. Getting on a line now with Matthew Tkachuk should certainly help as well. The underlying metrics for that line, very, very solid across the board. Again, matchups are okay, not terrible for the Florida Panthers tonight. It's interesting though, like we've seen so much success out of Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Reinhart last season, and this year it just has not worked. They spent a lot of time apart. Maybe Carter Verhaeghe learned his lesson on that third line for a while. Maybe they start to rediscover some of that fire from last season. Are you willing to get to Florida once night, even though they are 19,800 and grade out 16th best? The good news, this game's not seen a lot of ownership. Everybody at about 5%.
Yeah, I kind of like getting to Florida 1 here, to be honest with you. The line stats are pretty shocking for me to see, to be totally real with you. Like, I was very surprised seeing them coming in with 0.9 goals for per hour and their line stats here. But, all 3 of these guys, mainly Verhaeghe and Barkov, kind of been really snake bitten this year. They haven't really had the offensive success, especially in the terms of goal scoring that they had in recent years. Sam Reinhart, that's not the case. 1.5 goals per hour over his last 20 games. So he is continuing to chug along. Verhaeghe's had some strong shot volume. I'm sure that's going to continue to translate, getting up onto the top line. All 3 of these guys have, had some success playing against the Kings in the past. Verhaeghe, 3 goals, 6 points in 8 games. Barkov, 7 goals, 18 points in 17 games. And Reinhart, probably the one who struggled the most of the 3 goals and 9 points in 17 games. But it feels like a bit of a contrarian spot going to Florida 1 here in this game, but I kind of really like it. Even though they do grade out as the 16th best line to target overall, I take a look at this second line and I say, okay, well, in the same breath, like, they're so cheap. I mean, Sam Bennett's price has really come down to $4,900. Matthew Tkachuk at $7,000. I mean, that's really surprising to see, but similar to Verhaeghe and Barkov, like, Tkachuk just hasn't quite been himself this year. Maybe it's a Stanley Cup hangover. I don't know what it is, but they just haven't quite seemed to be firing on all cylinders here. So, and with Mackie Samoskevich, I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm hoping so. Close enough. We'll roll with it. On that second line, I'm not sure how much I love it. So I think for me, I'm probably going to be sticking to some Florida 1 if I get anybody from this Florida side into a lineup tonight.
Yeah, it's like you look at last year's numbers for Florida 1. So this year they're scoring at 0.9 goals for per 60. Last year was 3.2. They were averaging 3.4 expected goals for per 60. That is a lot higher than this year. 36 scoring chances, 11.5 high danger chances. I mean, they were just way better last year, and I'm willing to kind of gamble on the talent that's on this line. And I do think that they'll probably right the ship. It's been a while since they're together. I'm sure they'll be excited to get back playing together, especially if you're Haggy. And I do think that they can be, a good play tonight. Like you said, pretty contrarian at 4.6% average ownership for that line. And then, yes, Samoskevich, obviously, at $2,500 feels good. He's averaging like 2.2 shots per game over his last 10. Like I said, does have pretty good, numbers at lower levels, does have some offensive flair to his game. Tkachuk is way too cheap. Tkachuk really leading the way for this team as of late. Over the last 10 games, he leads the way with 8 points, although just 1 goal during that time. As you mentioned, Sam Reinhart really the only one, finding the back of the net with any regularity as of late for the Panthers. Any interest in the other side, the Kings? I mentioned that top line, that third line, having a really good matchup. The top two lines, not so much. The underlying metrics still pretty strong, obviously, for those two lines, but with such a bleak matchup, seeing a lot of the Barkov line and seeing a lot of the Lindell line. This is a Kings team that already struggles to score goals. It's a Kings team that, we've really struggled to play properly this year because the scoring is so spread out. You see here, they've averaged just 1.7 goals for per 60 over their last 10 games. It's been pretty bleak, and the power play is just doing absolutely nothing either. So the power play advantage tonight is the worst overall. To me, I'm probably not getting to a whole lot of LA whatsoever tonight, except for maybe a little bit of that third line if Fiala's in the lineup, and then obviously probably going to mix some Drew Doughty in as well. Just way too cheap.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the interest on the LA side for me is kind of LA 3 or bust, and it gets a little difficult there, with Fiala being a game time decision. So, and the thing about Fiala too, like he's the big shooter on this team, 9.9 shots on goal per hour of ice time. The only person who's remotely close right now is Adrian Kempe at 9.3. Then it's Alex Laferriere at 8.1 shots on goal per hour over his last 20 games. And the rest of the team, it's pretty bleak in terms of the shot volume. So it feels like a bit of an ugly spot here for the Kings as a whole. You mentioned the struggling power play. Can Drew Doughty help spark that? Maybe. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do so here tonight. So, the more that I think about it, the more, like, even just for me playing only 5 tonight, I might be comfortable just fully fading the forwards here in this game. I might try and sneak in a Fiala Deneau stack if it turns out that he does play. The one nice thing is that it is the first game of the night, so you will have some time to build your lineups if you want to get a Fiala in there for some LA3. But beyond that, man, it's pretty bleak in this game for me.
Let's move to game number 3. We've got the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia Flyers, a rematch of the other night. The Flyers won 4-2 in Philadelphia that night. No Sean Couturier that night. He will be back. So projected lineup for the Philadelphia Flyers tonight is as follows. Expecting to see Couturier back between Joel Farabee and Matvei Mishkov. And then you've got Lott moving down to that third line with Richard and Garnett Hathaway. So a couple different lines here tonight. Still no Nico Hischier for the New Jersey Devils. They announced today that he is considered week to week. So really tough blow there for the New Jersey Devils. No Nico Hischier, no Jacob Markstrom for the next few games at least. Really, really tough stretch coming up here for the New Jersey Devils. I just want to give you an idea. So we talked about it during that game. Or not during the game, before that game, really liking the look of that second line, even without Nico Hischier, just from a value standpoint. They were pretty solid in terms of kind of generating shot attempts, not a whole lot in terms of actual expected goals. 11 shot attempts, but just 1 scoring chance for during that game. But, they still had a fair amount of the puck. The matchup here tonight is basically just below average. They're going to see a mix of the top 6 here for the Philadelphia Flyers. But these underlying metrics still stand to be pretty strong for New Jersey, too. Still going to see a healthy amount of ice time. They still are only $14,700 tonight. I think going back to them, in a home ice matchup here is not the worst idea. Hopefully they have a little bit more success generating a few extra scoring chances tonight. But at $14,700, they feel like one of the better kind of mid-priced lines on the slate tonight. I have no issue getting back to them. In that same game, the Jack Hughes line, not quite as much success. They only had 8 shot attempts during that stretch. They did generate 4 scoring chances in just over 9 minutes of 5v5 play. So we know that this Philadelphia Flyers team has been very stingy defensively, right? Like we haven't really been stacking against the Flyers much at all. And if we would have taken a deeper look at this chart yesterday, we probably would have ended up landing on more Buffalo. I still got some Buffalo in the mix. We talked about really liking them on the show, but if you take a look at the Bruins over the last 10 games, they were getting crushed, and it continued last night, where it's the complete opposite tonight for the Philadelphia Flyers. They've just been so good defensively, so good on the PK. I find it a little difficult to get to a lot of New Jersey. I'll probably mix them in a little bit here and there because the underlying metrics are still really good. Jack Hughes is obviously just a stud, but the Flyers are tough, man, and Sam Ersson is running red hot. In his last 10 starts, 8-2 with a .925 save percentage, 1 shutout mixed in as well. It's hard to score against this Philadelphia Flyers team, and I don't know how much New Jersey I'm going to get to. And then you look, that second line, like I said, 9.6%. New Jersey won third highest owned line on the slate at 17.4%. It kind of feels like a decent fade here.
I totally agree with you. Typically in these situations where, you got a rematch so quickly, I like to look at the team that struggled in that first game and expect them to bounce back. And it seems like that's what the public is kind of thinking here with this game, just looking at this ownership coming in on the Devils' top 2 lines. I cannot get behind these numbers in terms of this ownership in this spot going up against the Flyers, who have been, like you mentioned, so strong defensively. And Samuel Ersson, man, he's been just great as of late, really, really finding a way to turn his season around. I think, over his last 10 games, you mentioned 8-2, 196 goals against average, a .925 save percentage. He slammed the door against the Devils 2 games ago, put up 20.7 DraftKings points. Him only being $7,300 tonight looks like a really solid goaltending play, especially when you consider there's only 3.9% of the field playing Ersson tonight. He obviously doesn't grade out very well in terms of the raw projections or anything like that, but it seems like a great bounce back spot for him to kind of continue to do so. I don't know if I can get behind the Devils at all, to be totally honest with you, in this spot. It feels really ugly for me, and I think this is a spot where, for me only building 5 lineups tonight, I'm willing to take a stand and almost fully fade the Devils here tonight. Obviously they're not the most expensive in the world or anything like that. New Jersey 1 coming in at $17,700, New Jersey 2 coming in at $14,700. Those are decent price points right there. I just don't know, man. It feels like a really tough spot here for them. It really does.
I mean, Ersson has beat them twice in the last week. He beat them back on January 18th, then again on January 27th. In that game on January 18th, the Flyers gave up 13 shots against. He stopped 12 of 13 in that game. They've just been so good defensively. It's really been impressive to watch this team kind of lock it down. So in 2 games against the Devils this year, he is 2-0, obviously, but they won 50 goals against average and a .935 save percentage in those 2 games. Yeah, I think I'm more inclined to probably get to Philly 2, or New Jersey 2 as a value option as I am to pay up for New Jersey 1, even though they're not all that expensive. Hughes and Bratt seem to be maybe, some bad chalk tonight. And honestly, Jack Hughes, only 4 goals in 22 career games against the Flyers as well. Again, the past doesn't really predict the future too much, but that's a number, right? 4 goals in 22 games. They've done a very good job bottling him up. On the Philadelphia Flyers side of things, obviously this is an offense that, as good as the defense has been, the offense is okay. It's not great. It's okay. There's, still generating 2.67 expected goals for per 60, not really scoring or capitalizing on all those goals. But what's really nice tonight is they, as bad as their power play has been, the Devils' PK has been really bad as of late. 26th over their last 10 games. So nice power play matchup tonight for the Philadelphia Flyers as well. And the matchups look pretty good too. The top line and the third line grade out extremely well in terms of a matchup score tonight. That top line continues to be hilarious. Generating literally nothing, but just capitalizing on every single chance that they get. The third line is just, we talk about them probably way more than we should, but absolutely love Brink, Cates, Forrester. John Tortorella does too, and we know for sure they're going to get a lot of ice time tonight. They play on the power play now as well. Really like getting a Philadelphia 3 in a good matchup tonight as a value option, and I'm going to keep pointing it out because as long as Farabee, Couturier, and Mishkov are together, yes, the underlying metrics on the charts will not support exactly how good they've been. If you've watched these shows over the last couple times the Flyers have played, I've read you the actual numbers, but the sample is just a little bit too small. What is happening here? I'm trying to find Matvei Mishkov, and I cannot. Stand by, because these numbers are insane, and they are worth mentioning. So Sean Couturier, Matvei Mishkov, and Joel Farabee have played 55 minutes together, I believe, this year. Let me see if it loads. If not, we will move on. Okay, 52 minutes together. They are averaging 4.8 expected goals for per 60, 38 scoring chances for, and 22 high danger chances for per 60. So it is tough here. How good they've been is tough to really replicate that in the charts because the sample is so small, but they're also in a good spot. The issue for them is they definitely draw the worst matchup of the trio, the top 9 here for the Flyers, but I have interest in basically this entire top 9 tonight with Jake Allen between the pipes. So Philadelphia 3 actually grades out the best at just 1.5% ownership. I mean, absolutely. I will be all over that. The top line, not seeing a whole lot of ownership either. And then the second line, basically seeing nothing. So I think this is a really nice contrarian spot here for the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's see if they can get to 3-0 against the Devils on the season. What are you doing here with the Devils or the Flyers?
The Flyers, yeah, definitely got interest in the Flyers here. Philadelphia 3 grading out as the 10th best line to target. Feels like that's the first time we've seen them creep into the top 10 here this season, and they have been great so far this season. I think one build that I'm going to kind of try and look at to get some Philly 3 exposure tonight is full stacking them with Rasmus Ristolainen. Looks like Risto's getting the bump up to the top power play unit here. So he'll have some correlation there with Bobby Brink. And then these 4 guys play a little bit together at 5-on-5 as well. 93 minutes so far at 5-on-5 this season. Their offensive numbers are very similar to what we see in the line stats in terms of the goals for and the expected goal share. Slight dips in the scoring chance numbers and the high danger chances, but still pretty respectable numbers there as well. So I think that's one way that I'm going to get some exposure here to Philly 3 tonight. And then for me, Philadelphia 1. I mean, I'm comfortable playing them here again tonight. It seems like a really nice spot once again. Travis Konechny, the guy who's really had the most success of that trio against the Devils in his career, 14 goals, 26 points in 36 games played. Feels like a really nice contrarian spot here.
Angelo saying that the Daily Faceoff website has Ersson rated the lowest on the entire slate tonight between goalies, and that is because it's all based on the betting lines. And it's the same thing on the charts here, right? The Devils are very high favorites tonight. So it's hard to sit here and be like, yeah, like this is a great spot to play Ersson. But, when you dig into the numbers a little bit, which is what we do here, you can kind of find maybe some spots that the market is missing. And so when it's so heavily influenced by the betting lines, which the Devils are the biggest favorites on the entire slate. That is why I bet the Flyers this morning. I feel pretty good about that after digging these numbers even further. That's why he rates the lowest on the site. That's why he grades out the lowest here. It's just because he has a 38.6 implied win percentage. But hopefully they can turn the tables on the books tonight. Let's get to the 4th game of the night. Zach, how you doing for time here, bud?
Doing good, but we're starting to get a little pinchy here, so let's keep rolling.
Let's go here. We got the Nashville Predators against the Vancouver Canucks. The Predators are minus 143 home faves, 3.2 implied total for them. We have pretty bad matchups across the board here for Nashville. Pretty good matchups in the bottom 2 lines here for the Vancouver Canucks. I still find it quite difficult to trust this Vancouver Canucks offense. Obviously, they're coming off of a strong performance the other night. I don't think I've played the Vancouver Canucks one time all season. They are still averaging 1.33 goals for per 60 in their last 10, just 2.15 goals, expected goals for per 60 in their last 10. It's really difficult to trust this offense. It's really difficult to figure out exactly what's going on with this team. The matchups, though, are really, really good, especially for that Elias Pettersson line. The problem with that Elias Pettersson line is the offensive metrics are pretty horrendous. So I'm probably pretty comfortable doing the same thing I've done all season long, and that's mostly just not play the Vancouver Canucks. They're coming in at about 5% ownership on the first and third line. The second line a little bit lower at 3% ownership. So I don't feel like I'm going to get burned too badly by Vancouver. If I do, so be it. They're so difficult to figure out. They're so difficult to trust. The one thing you can point at and say, hey, let's just kind of do it is the fact that they're super cheap. Miller 5,300, Besser 5,100. The third line is 12,100 to full stack. DeBrusque, Suter, Connor Garland. That's the trio that I would most likely get to tonight at 12,100. They have the 100% matchup score. They're going to see a ton of that Forsberg line tonight. That Forsberg line, as good as they've been offensively, it's just pond hockey out there. They're giving up everything. So I'll probably get to that third line. The underlying metrics aren't great, but the 100% matchup score, they play a good amount. I don't mind getting to Vancouver 3 in a value spot tonight. The Nashville side of things, Nashville comes in at 13% ownership, that top line. Matchup for them, again, not great, but we know how good they've been. The underlying metrics here are just unbelievable. Phil Forsberg, one of the hottest players in the entire NHL right now. Hopefully he can keep things rolling tonight. And then this third line, we've talked about them a lot lately. We've basically talked about them a lot for the last few years. It used to be mostly Evangelista and Novak. Now they've got a new friend, at least Novak does, in Fedor Svechkov on that third line. Their underlying metrics have been superb. Again, their matchup far from ideal tonight, but their underlying metrics are just incredible. We know that Thatcher Demko hasn't played all that well. Nashville 3, just $8,600 to get down there tonight. Svechkov 32, Novak 2,900, and Leroux, if you want to include him, at $2,500. But I don't mind a Novak Svechkov mini stack once again tonight. Really, really cheap, really strong underlying numbers. And as we see here, the Canucks have been very low event all season. Defensively, they're one of the worst teams on this slate tonight over the last 10 games, and we know that the goaltending has not been all that great either. And then Zach, I know we're getting short on time here, but the Predators also have the number one power play advantage on the slate. Third best power play up against the 20th ranked PK. So a lot to like about Nashville 1 tonight. Obviously fully correlated on that top power play unit with Ryan O'Reilly and Roman Josi, and then you've got Svechkov, Novak on that second power play unit. A lot to like about the Nashville side of things, and I'm a little surprised at how low their ownership is.
Yeah, I agree with you here. I really like the look of this spot for Nashville 1. You want to talk about past success against teams. Steven Stamkos, he absolutely owns Vancouver in his career. 22 games played, 19 goals and 31 points, averaging 16.1 DraftKings points per game without any of the bonuses or block shots accounted there. So he looks great. Jonathan Marchessault, he's also ripped up the Canucks in his career. Philip Forsberg, he's had success too. So, I mean, for me, Nashville 1 is probably my favorite play on the slate as a whole. I really like the Predators here in this spot tonight. Thatcher Demko just looks like a shell of himself right now, obviously working his way back from that Popliteus injury. 3 wins in 12 games played this season, an .867 save percentage, a negative 5.1 goals saved above expected. He's had some success against Nashville in his career in the past, but man, it just looks so bleak there right now. And, everything else that's going on off the ice, we talk about it all the time. Jim Rutherford the other day coming out with his comments about, the spat between Miller and Pettersson, and then JT Miller saying, oh yeah, I have no problems with Elias Pettersson. I'm pretty sure he's talking about defenseman Elias Pettersson, not forward Elias Pettersson. But you know what, it's an ugly spot here for the Canucks. Some people in the chat saying some decent one-offs there, like a Garland one-off. I don't hate that idea, or a DeBrusque one-off. I think that's probably a fine move. Miller, Pettersson, they're fine one-off options for me, but I just can't back these guys as a full stack whatsoever. For me, it's going to be pretty much Nashville 1 or bust. And I'm also going to be comfortable getting down to Nashville 3 as well. I mean, Fedor Svechkov, Tommy Novak, Zachary Leroux, just some great underlying numbers from these guys, generating tons of chances. Svechkov, man, he's on an absolute heater right now. Over his last 20 games, 1.8 goals per hour, 1.5 individual expected goals. Leroux, 1.7 individual expected goals per hour. Svechkov, 10.3 shots on goal per hour. And then Tommy Novak, just shot volume all over the place, 8.5 shots on goal per hour. So Nashville 3, Philly 3, probably my 2 favorite value plays on the slate tonight here.
Yeah, and a full agreement there. Like I said, I like Vancouver 3 a little bit. Connor Garland one-off feels pretty good. Maybe a Garland Quinn Hughes mini stack, right? Get some power play correlation there. Power play advantage is sixth best for the Canucks tonight. Let's get to the final game of the night. We got the Utah Hockey Club and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins are plus 119 on the road tonight, minus 132 for the Utah Hockey Club with a 3.2 implied total. Matchups for this one, the top line has a great matchup for Utah. That's about it. After that, it gets pretty dark. Then for the Pittsburgh Penguins, pretty good matchup again for that top line. Both those lines not great defensively. They're going to see a lot of each other tonight. Second and third lines look okay. Pittsburgh depth flop for us the other night. I wonder if we will go back there tonight. But the top line for the Utah Hockey Club, the underlying metrics are so. They're capitalizing on every chance they get though. And again, good matchup here against this Crosby line that gives up a ton of chances and a ton of goals. So should be a high event matchup there. Both those lines look like they're pretty good plays this evening. The only issue for Utah is they grade out as the highest owned line on the slate. Pittsburgh 1 comes in very low owned, though, at 5%. They definitely have my interest tonight as the number 3 ranked line overall, 20,800. We talk about how much this line just scores. They're cooling off a little bit as of late. But the price is starting to come down on Raquel, starting to come down on Rust as well. They have the second best power play advantage on the night as well. They fully correlate on that unit. So I think there's a lot to like about Pittsburgh 1 tonight. I think that, grading out as the third best line with only 5% ownership, they seem like a very good get different play for me tonight. I probably honestly prefer them to Utah. I do like getting to Utah tonight as well at 16,900. I think they're a good play, but at 24% ownership, there's just no way I'm getting there. It seems way too high. This Pittsburgh Penguins, for the most part, have been pretty good defensively lately. They've given up a lot of goals, in kind of spurts. They've had some good games, and then they've had some really bad games. It just kind of all depends which Pittsburgh Penguins team shows up tonight. I mean, it's not impressive that they held the Sharks to just 2 goals the other night, but, this road trip hasn't necessarily been super kind to them. It's their final game of the road trip. I'm sure they're going to be excited to head home, but I think that they've been decent enough defensively that I'm not just jamming Utah into my lineup. And it's not like that line's been pretty fortunate. So 25% ownership is just way too high for me. I'll be mixing them in, but I won't be getting there. There's just no shot. The second line for Pittsburgh too, their second and third line are going to look a little bit different. The second line grades out pretty well. That's going to be the Kevin Hayes, Michael Bunting, Anthony Beauvillier line. So I don't mind playing them either. The underlying metrics here are pretty solid for that trio. The matchup scores reasonable. I think they're also a pretty decent value option tonight. You got Bunting on that top power play unit as well. It just talks about how good the power play matchup is for them. If you're looking for another really get different spot tonight, I think that second line for the Pittsburgh Penguins is okay. What do you make of this Pittsburgh-Utah game? We've seen a much better Connor Ingram as of late. Does that scare you off of the Pittsburgh Penguins at all? I just want to bring up his numbers here. So bit of a struggle bus against the Winnipeg Jets in his last outing. Since returning to the crease in mid-January, he's 2-2 with a 908 save percentage. What are you doing with the Penguins, the hockey club tonight?
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh 1 here quite a bit. I think this is a great pivot spot on the slate. You want to talk about teams like we talked about the Devils and the Flyers and how, like one narrative that I like to kind of play is, the second game between the two teams, the losing team rebounding. On November 3rd, these two teams met and Utah walloped them 6-1. I really like going back to Pittsburgh 1 here in a really low owned spot. You mentioned the road trip being tough for them. It certainly has. Started in Buffalo with a 5-2 win, then they lost 4-1 to Washington. They beat LA 5-1 and then 5-1 losses to Anaheim. 4-1 loss to Seattle, 2-1 loss to the Sharks. I can imagine the Penguins are going to want to come out here and get a win heading home and feel a little bit better about themselves on this road trip, a chance to get to 500. That's definitely a narrative that teams love to look at. So I'm pretty comfortable playing some Pittsburgh 1 here, grading out as the third best line to target on the slate. Only 5% ownership coming their way. It looks like a really solid matchup for them here tonight with 47% of their ice time against that top line and the majority of the rest of their minutes at 30% coming in against that fourth line. So I'll be comfortable getting over the field here on Pittsburgh 1 tonight and hoping that they're able to rebound. Over the last 20 games for these three guys, Raquel, Crosby, and Rust, they're continuing to find ways to be productive in scoring goals. So I think it's a really nice bounce back spot for Pittsburgh 1. I also like getting to some Utah 1 here too. I also agree with you though. I don't like getting to 24% Utah 1. That is a crazy high number for me. This is going to be a slate where I'm fading some of this chalk for sure, man, when it comes to the Devils and the Utah Hockey Club. I'm not going to be going full fade on this Utah 1 line. I like them better than I like the Devils here tonight overall. So I'll be mixing in some Utah 1 here. I think I got a lineup that's a little bit of a game stack here with Utah 1 and Pittsburgh 1. And I think that's an interesting angle to kind of take, hoping that both of these lines find ways to kind of pop off offensively. So that's kind of where I'm going to be targeting this game. No real interest in these death lines for me, although Michael Bunting, he's been so good on the power play this season, and the Penguins do have the second best power play matchup on this slate tonight. So don't mind mixing him into some of these Pittsburgh 1 stacks as well.
No, me either. Okay, that's pretty much going to cover it for this forward line stacking section of the show. Let's get to the blue line now, and we'll get Zach on his way to pick up a kitty cat. Sort by value here. Jake McCabe, always a strong value option, $3,600. Oliver Ekman Larson, kind of same boat. Brady Shea, I think, is a really nice stack, especially with that Nashville 3 stack. They correlate on that second power play unit. Don't really love the Devils tonight, but Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce, always strong value options, obviously. Utah seeing a ton of ownership tonight. Michael Kesselring probably getting bumped to the second power play unit with Mikhail Sergachev back. That value kind of dries up a little bit there. But John Marino, $3,100, I think is a fine pivot option. Going to see a lot of minutes on that top pair with Sergachev. I don't mind getting there. We always got to talk about Nick Blankenberg, Justin Barron, kind of same boat. He plays on the top pair with Roman Josi. Super, super low owned tonight as well. You mentioned Rasmus Ristolainen. I like getting there. We talked about Drew Doughty. Where's Jared Spurgeon? He's got to be pretty cheap too, no? Yeah, $4,400. Don't mind getting to Jared Spurgeon either on that top power play unit for the Wild. Sort by ownership. Zach, who do you like tonight?
Couple shot block gods out there. Chris Tanev, Jake Middleton, projected for the 2 highest block shot totals. I think those guys are great plays on the blue line tonight. They're obviously a little bit more on the expensive side, but it is the highest paced game of the night. So, in both these guys, in Tanev and Jake Middleton, are guys who are going to be playing fair amounts of ice time out there on a regular basis, right? So I like both of those guys here tonight. I think you mentioned some good other shout outs there too. Drew Doughty, obviously I got some interest in him at $3,400. He's been a solid player the last number of years here. So don't mind those guys here on this slate. Nick Blankenberg, Nashville 2 or Nashville second pairing. He looks to be a solid play, as does Justin Barron at $3K.
Eric wants to know, how many minutes do you think Doughty will play tonight? I think he'll be around 20. Like usually a guy that goes easily for 25, 26. I think he'll be close to 20 tonight. He's just too good. And like they wouldn't be putting him back in the lineup if he wasn't ready to rock. So I think he'll be close to 20. If they dress 7 and Brant Clark plays, I think maybe it drops down a little bit. What do we got him projected for here? I got them projected to play 7 defensemen, which knocks his minutes down. So yeah, I think that's probably fair. 18 minutes if they play 7 defensemen, probably 20 if they play 6. Between the pipes tonight, we've got Sergei Bobrovsky, great now as the number 1 goalie overall. I don't know how I feel about that at $8,200. Joseph Woll, probably a bit of a risky play in my opinion tonight as well, even with Kaprizov out. That is the highest event game of the night, though. Could see a lot of shot volume. Connor Ingram, $7,900. Don't love that either. Darcy Kemper seems like a great value play at $7,200. Nedeljkovic seems like a really good leverage play, although a risky one without question. Honestly, man, I like a lot of UC Saros. I like a lot of Darcy Kemper. I like a lot of Sam Harrison tonight. The expensive goalies, not in love with it. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you on all 3 of those guys. I don't mind Philip Gustafson at $7,400 too, even though he's kind of been struggling as of late. I think he's an okay play tonight. Probably going to see a fair amount of volume. Joseph Woll, same reason in that game at $8K. Probably a solid volume spot there for him. Kemper, Saros, Harrison, probably consolidate a lot of my ownership to those 3 guys tonight.
Kemper is projected to be the highest owned goalie on the slate, followed by Woll, Ingram, Allen, Demko. So we're definitely we're very contrarian across the board on tonight's slate. And if we get it right, it could be a great night. If we get it wrong, well, oops. But let's get to today's hat trick pick challenge. Again, if you want to participate in today's hat trick pick challenge, you got to drop your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video. If your player scores a hat trick, we'll get you a $25 gift card to Nation Gear. I believe we had at least 1 winner yesterday. We had 3 hat tricks yesterday or 2? three? There's 3 hat tricks. Yeah, Wyatt Johnson too.
Oh yeah, Wyatt Johnson.
Wyatt Johnson. Yeah, it came through at the end. So there's 3 hat tricks yesterday. I know that we had at least one person pick Tage. I'll have to go back and review the tape. If you picked anybody yesterday, let me know, and we'll get you a $25 gift card to nationgear.ca. We have no daily face-off head-to-head, so let's get right into our hat trick picks. We don't know who won yesterday, so Zach, you won our most recent one. You can go first today.
I'm going to go with Steven Stamkos, and we did have just one hat trick pick winner yesterday. Shout out to Tom Krieger. Get a hold of Brock, and he'll get you that gift card.
Oh, I'm sure he will. He actually mentioned it yesterday. He didn't win $100K, but at least he won a $25 gift card. It's like, which would you rather have? Speaking of Nashville, I did look at their numbers. He has 3 goals in 2 games against the Canucks this year. Forsberg has 3 assists in 2 games against the Canucks, and Marchessault has 2 assists in 2 games against the Canucks this season. My hat trick pick will be none other than, I haven't really thought about it hard, but I'm going to go with, oh boy, Kevin Fiala. Hope he plays. Give me Kevin Fiala. That is going to do it for this edition of the DFO DFS report. We got out of here just in time for Zach to go pick up a cat. But before we go, shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing us with projected ownership for tonight's show. Really has leveled up the show. We appreciate them so much. If you want to get $20 off your first month of RotoGrinders NHL Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also in the description is a link to our DFO DFS Discord. That community is growing every single day. Chat DFS. We share punt plays and ideas and bounce ideas off each other all day. We also, I provide a little bit more information during the weekend specifically for that group. And then we also provide all of the late breaking news, whether it's lineup changes, injuries, all that type of stuff in warm-ups. We make sure you don't miss a thing, so you don't have any holes in your lineup. No zeros. We don't want any donuts, no snowflakes in the lineups tonight. So best of luck tonight. Hopefully we return with more money in our bankrolls tomorrow than we have tonight. Until tomorrow, cheers. We'll see you then.
Cheers.